Okay, so I'm going to kind of do something a little bit different with this video. Is instead of doing sound design process, I'm kind of doing what was my process for creating a score for a college assignment, actually for my audio for video course. It was just a complete sound redesign for the Halo 2 cutscene Return to Sender, where he takes the bomb and flies it back. Um, and I completely redid all of the sound, from music to sound design to dialogue. I completely re-recorded all of that. So this is just the musical part of it. And I kind of wanted to use this to illustrate what is different about scoring for movies and trailers and cutscenes and stuff like that compared to regular everyday music on the radio and music for video games specifically. Um, First off is, unlike music on the radio and albums, stuff like that, this is not necessarily about its own story. It's not necessarily about the members and showing off their talents and all that stuff. It's not individualistic. It kind of exists to serve a higher purpose, and that purpose is the video itself. It's not like video game music in that it follows what you see on screen a lot more carefully. It matches visual cues. When you see something on screen, usually there's cuts. There's the pacing of it matches with the music. And so with video game music, you don't have that luxury because it's not on a linear format. Obviously, there's ways to make it slightly more linear, but it's still not as it will never be as linear as a movie trailer or a video or something like that. Lastly, what the scores need to do for film is it needs to provide the pacing. First off, it's the pacing. It kind of builds tension. We need to build tension. It helps kind of lead what you see on screen along. And it also helps reinforce the emotion or the feeling of the video as well. So obviously, like, if you have a chase scene, you've got drums going and it's kind of upbeat, it's kind of fast, it's kind of frantic to kind of give you that pacing, like this is a high tense situation. If there's like a death scene or something really sad on screen, you have strings, you've got, piano, it's slowed down, it's removed, it's open, it's in a minor key, stuff like that. So it kind of, the music is just reinforcing what you see on screen and hear with the dialogue. With this, I went in and tried to make sure I knew what the pacing was. I went in and tapped out a tempo. I watched this without any sort of sound. I even pulled the sound out of the video file. First off, I started out, tapped out. I wanted this rise at the very beginning where the bomb is still activated and it needs to be deactivated. It starts off super high tense, and I added that in. As you can kind of see, I've got these little titles here that I added in to help myself with the pacing. Then here it should break out completely and just be some silence. I added a little bit of stuff in here, but it's relatively removed and focuses much more on the dialogue than anywhere else. It starts off with an electronic part that I wanted to do, and it helps kind of build the tension in this scene here where he's kind of taking the bomb up the elevator, out to the airlock, and then opens the airlock. And then once he opens the airlock and gets out into space, it's kind of the climax of this video. And it's epic, it's grand, it's ridiculous. So I added this like heavy metal kind of vibe with some strings. And then once he's back in this scene, I made it much more ambient and removed again, similar to up here with the silence. So first off, what I did to kind of give you that frantic, you need to act now, this is high tension, like very tense situation, is I added some percussion and some cellos. Again, just very dramatic, very tense. And I add these rising strings here. That matches pretty much exactly what you see on screen with his hand touching the bomb. Together, this kind of helps build this really high tension situation. The dialogue is helping reinforce that. And then he did it. Everyone's safe. You can take a break now. This is kind of like the breath. There's dialogue that's happening in this part, which I'm giving the space for. And then once he says, like, I'm going to give the Covenant back their bomb, it's like, okay, now we're back up, we're rising again. And to do that, I had this part right here. what I wanted to do is have a pulsing line. So with this, like the pulse is really helping pace the piece together. It's also helping to kind of build up this tension again. Just simple 4 notes over and over and over. And then I have this line, which just matches that bass line as well. And I have a really low sub bass line, which you can barely hear. And that's all helping to kind of give this big soundscape that helps rise the tension, as well as this ridiculous sound. It's basically the Inception sound that I pitched to match the key of the piece, as well as ran it through a ridiculous 12-second reverb to kind of just, you can kind of hear it all the way out until pretty much it starts again. It continues to tail off. Again, to help kind of have tension high, help with the pacing as well. Brought in strings to kind of give it less repetitive feeling. It's the same parts over and over and over. The strings are coming in, helping make it a little bit more epic. And as you can kind of see with this part, I went up with the strings and went down. And then before I went into this next part, I brought it up and then down and then back up again. So you can kind of hear the strings go nice and high. And then I move into the staccato bit, where I've got the strings here. Again, doing more pacing and tension rising. And then, whereas in these first 3 measures, or phrases, I had it quarter note pulse. I have an 8th note pulse here. Again, rising the tension. You know that something epic is about to happen. It's about to fly in space with a giant bomb, so I wanted to help build that up as much as possible. And again, added that kind of string rise in here that I even faded in. Big hit. So I led into this with the strings and all the, this giant buildup. I added parts in here and here and here and kept adding and adding and adding. And then finally moved into the big hit where I've got a sub drop in the key of C, which is where the song is in. Helps that hit. I've got double-tracked guitars, which sound bigger and badder and meaner than just a single-track guitar. I've got double-tracked bass, essentially. It's the same. It's actually not necessarily double-tracked, but I just split it up and ran it through a completely different signal chain. So here I've just got a regular bass amp and some EQ and some noise gate, stuff like that. Here I ran it through Pod Farm, which is a kind of a cheap guitar amp simulator, and then helped kind of build this big meaty bass sound. And then with the drums, I also wanted to make it big and ridiculous, so I took the kick drum and then added a sine wave to it, which is using Logic's test oscillator, which just plays just a straight tone. I'll play it for you. It's just super low tone. I noise gated it to kind of clamp it off, and it only opens the noise gate when it receives a kick. So here's it without. And you can kind of see the open and close part here that as the kick is hitting, it opens the gate up and plays this sound. It's just, you can feel it's a little bit heavier, it's a little bit meatier, it just helps make the kick a little bit bigger sounding, and I wanted a huge sound for this bit. So I've got same instrument as before, but playing a ridiculous arpeggio line. To kind of help make it more epic, as well as a guitar solo kind of piece here, strings coming back in, synthesizers back in. Just overall wanted to make this as big of a soundscape as possible. And again, I didn't want to make the guitar solo super duper ridiculous so it took you out of what you're watching. I wanted the focus to be on screen and the music to just reinforce that. It's not about how good I am as a guitarist, it's about the story I'm trying to help tell with the music. And now with this, I wanted to make sure with this scene right here, this cut, it's this giant open scene. It's the inside of the Covenant ship. It's where the entire pacing of the film cuts. It changes to incredibly slow. It's just another breath, essentially. And what I wanted to do is make sure it ended, this giant epic piece ended as soon as he got there, because I didn't want to continue it on, because it would have just been the wrong feeling, the wrong pacing at that time. So where I have these repeating phrases here with the guitars, it's 8 measures, 8 measures. This is only, I think it's 5, 6. It's only 6 measures. So I had to cut it short and add this kind of impromptu ending. To make sure it stopped right when you got to the scene. And again, we have this synthesizer, very low ambience, super duper low. It's minus 20 dB, very much in the background, to kind of give a breath, because you know what's happening here. We've reached what we wanted to. The bomb is exploding, and then there's dialogue that happens. So I really wanted to make sure that I matched that vibe as well. So that's basically what I did with this whole piece. It's, about almost 3 minutes long, and I really wanted to try to match the pacing with this, and basically what this purpose of this video was to show you the difference between how you would write for a traditional album or for a video game soundtrack, because film is just a little bit different, and so I kind of wanted to show that off, as well as like kind of show off my part that I wrote, because I'm pretty proud of this music. This is probably one of my favorite pieces I've ever written. So that's the end of this. If you have any questions, feel free to comment and stuff like that, and subscribe. Thank you very much.